What if Anakin joined Palpatine but rejected the dark side? What would happen then? Let's find out. The Temple of the Jedi Order lay shrouded in the perfume of recent slaughter. The acrid smoke of blaster fire and the more pungent aroma of lightsaber cauterized flesh hung in the air like an olfactory monument to one Sith Lord's patient scheming. Into this charnel tableau descended the Theta-class shuttle of Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, its tri-winged silhouette cut through rising smoke, settling upon the landing platform beneath the temple's 5 spires, like a Korriban carrion moth drawn to new death, though the man who emerged had made the courses himself. Commander Fox and his red-armored Coruscant Guard followed at his heels like well-trained hounds. Commander Appo and his 501st Troopers met him on the platform, helmets removed in deference, wearing that same slack expression they all wore, like men hollowed out by mercurily brain leeches, empty behind the eyes. Skywalker awaited in the council chamber, Appo reported. Palpatine moved toward the temple entrance without a word. Behind him, helmets clicked back into place as both contingents, Fox's Coruscant Guard and Appo's 501st, fell into step. Without breaking stride, the Sith Lord raised one hand and sent them all skidding backward across the scorched Duracrete. He knew this temple well enough. He did not require an escort of these animals, creatures built to betray, whose slavish obedience only made his skin crawl all the more. He ascended alone, a dark shape through corridors of the dead, until he reached that circular room wherein the galaxy's most self-satisfied force-wielders had once deliberated over matters they scarcely understood. Anakin Skywalker had sensed his arrival. By the time Palpatine entered the night-darkened chamber, stepping carefully around the bodies of younglings whose promising futures had been rather decisively abbreviated, the Chosen One, the hero with no fear, and, as of the last 45 minutes, the most effective Jedi killer in a millennium had already dropped into an awkward kneel. "Excellent, Lord Vader. You have..." The young man's knee shifted, adjusted. Palpatine paused, his yellow eyes, those sulphurous orbs that burned with the accumulated hatred of 1,000 years of Sith persecution, blinking with momentary confusion. "As I was saying," the Dark Lord began anew, "you have brought..." The knee moved again. Anakin's mechanical hand braced against the floor, his body swaying left, then overcorrecting right, his boot squeaking against the marble like something dying. "Lord Vader..." The Sith Master's eye twitched, a minute spasm of the orbicularis oculi muscle that betrayed, for one infinitesimal moment, the seething irritation building within his darkened soul. "Lord Vader, will you stop this?" "You know what?" Anakin Skywalker stood abruptly, his imposing frame unfolding to its full height, with the graceless immediacy of a man who had simply run out of patience for ritualistic nonsense. "I can't do this. The kneeling, the titles, the theatrics. Look, can we just have a normal conversation, like two people who aren't performing for an audience that's already dead?" Palpatine's mouth hung open, an expression that, combined with his lightning-ravaged features, created a visage of such profound grotesquerie that it would have sent lesser beings screaming into the therapeutic embrace of madness. "It's just weird. Really weird. Like wearing robes pulled off a corpse. Not that I've done that. The point is..." He gestured broadly at the carnage surrounding them, at the small bodies cooling in the temple's climate-controlled atmosphere. "I'm doing this to save Padme. That's it. That's the entirety of my motivation. I don't care about this whole edginess, or the Sith Grand Plan, or whatever millennia-spanning revenge scheme dreamed up by Darth Bane or Darth Baney or Darth f***ing Darthius. I genuinely could not care less. Your hatred will make you power. I can hate just fine without wearing a silly robe and calling myself Darth Venomous or whatever the f***." Anakin's blue eyes, still blue notably, not yet touched by the golden corruption of the dark side despite having just committed what could only be described as industrial-scale youngling slaughter, met Palpatine's sulphurous gaze with the straightforward pragmatism of a man who viewed galactic domination as merely a means to an end. "Look, the Jedi are gone. No one is going to kill you or me anymore. A narrative about how the Jedi were ordered by the Council to assassinate you and seize the Senate, maybe throw in something about younglings being used as human shields, will absolutely sell to the HoloNet. So there you go, you have everything you need for your political machinations. Now, on to Padme. The life-saving technique. How does it work? When do we start? Let's go." For perhaps the first time in decades, Palpatine couldn't get a word in. "Well," he managed, "you see, Anakin, there is the matter of the Separatist Council. I don't care about the f***ing Separatist Council. Just bomb them from orbit or something. Padme's life is my priority. You said we can find the technique together. So..." He spread his hands, the gesture encompassing the corpse-strewn chamber, the ruined temple, the galaxy itself. Let's do it. Palpatine found himself experiencing an emotion he had not felt in many decades, the distinct sensation of events spiraling beyond his meticulously planned control. Okay, Anakin, okay. He raised his hands in a gesture of placation, his mind racing through alternative approaches like a navigation computer calculating hyperspace routes. The Separatists, I will deal with them myself. For Senator Amidala, Palpatine added, once the Separatists have been dealt with and I have officially formed our empire, I can teach you the technique. I would love to help right now. Truly I would. But without them dead, I cannot end the war. And without ending the war, I cannot declare myself emperor. The whole sequence of events simply won't work, and I must go myself. No one can ever learn that I knew their location. That would raise uncomfortable questions. I shall go kill them and come back. All the knowledge the Jedi kept hidden in their archives is now open to us. Why don't you research in them while I'm away? There may be other useful techniques within. When I return, we can combine what you find with what I already know. We will have our empire and save the Senator together. What do you say? The archives. 25,000 years of accumulated Jedi knowledge. Every technique, every secret, every forbidden study the Council had kept locked away from mere knights. A door shut when they denied him the rank of Master. And now the entire repository lay open to him. No Council to deny access. No Jocasta Nu to hover disapprovingly. If a technique to save Padme existed anywhere in the galaxy, it would be there. Fine, Anakin said. Fine. 25,000 years of knowledge. I'll take a look, but return soon. Yes, Anakin. Research in the archives. I will be back shortly and help you. In the shadowed recesses of his corroded soul, Darth Sidious allowed himself a moment of private amusement. For he knew, had known since the moment he first sensed Skywalker's anxiety, that the boy's visions were nothing more than stress-induced nightmares. The woman was almost certainly not going to die. She was young, healthy, wealthy enough to afford the finest medical care in the galaxy, and possessed of a stubbornness that suggested her body would refuse death simply out of spite. When she survived childbirth, as she almost certainly would, he would simply convince Anakin that their dark side intervention had saved her. Once the boy believed Sith power had rescued his beloved from the grave's gaping maw, surely he would want to learn more. Of course, that would require actually staging the intervention. Standing beside Anakin in some medical ward, both of them waving their hands over a screaming Senator Amidala while droids beeped and attendants stared. Perhaps holding hands to channel their combined force energy. Perhaps chanting something ominous in Sith. And in his peripheral vision, one of Amidala's guards, face twitching, desperately trying not to laugh. The mental image made him feel like a profound idiot. No matter. He would work out the theatrical details later, and whatever he contrived, Anakin would believe it. The boy had never been guarded around him, had never suspected in all their years of friendship that every sympathetic word had been calculated. Perhaps things would be different now, with the truth revealed. But then again, Anakin had never liked the Jedi. He had no Chancellor. Palpatine startled from his internal monologue with the undignified jolt of a man caught in the midst of mental self-congratulation. I'll be in the archives, Anakin announced, already striding toward the chamber's exit. Contact me when you return. Of course, Anakin. Of course. The Dark Lord watched his apprentice depart, watched the billowing robes disappear around the corridor's corner, and found himself suddenly, utterly alone amidst the cooling bodies. He stood in silence for a moment, breathing the temple's death-tinged air, contemplating the magnitude of his triumph. The Jedi were destroyed. The Republic was falling. The Empire would rise, and he, Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, would rule it all. His yellow eyes drifted upward, tracing the chamber's elegant architecture, the soaring ceiling that had witnessed 1,000 years of pompous Jedi deliberations, and froze upon a small black dome mounted in the corner where wall met ceiling, a security camera pointed directly at him, recording presumably everything that had transpired in this chamber. Heh, the sound escaped him, half laugh, half sigh, wholly irritated. All this was recorded. Not just this chamber, the entire temple would be riddled with security recordings, every corridor, every hall, every room where Skywalker had cut down Jedi and younglings alike. All it would take was one of these masked parasites clicking the wrong button, and the whole massacre could broadcast across the holonet. Bad for the narrative. He activated his comlink. Fox. Sir. The response came immediately from the landing platform where he had discarded them. The temple's security recordings, all of them. Make certain every last file is purged, you worthless animal, or you will be lying dead among these younglings you so bravely murdered. Am I clear? Yes, sir. And prepare my shuttle. I must depart from Mustafar immediately. Yes, sir. He terminated the transmission, picturing Fox down on that landing platform. That face, the same face worn by every soldier who had gunned down their Jedi generals mere hours ago. The familiar churning of hatred rose within his chest. This was, he knew, profoundly illogical. The clones had done precisely what he and Dooku had designed them to do. The inhibitor chips planted in their brains had functioned exactly as intended, overriding loyalty and friendship and years of battlefield camaraderie to transform them into instruments of Jedi extermination. They were tools, nothing more, nothing less, and one did not hate a hammer for driving nails. And yet, the feeling persisted, a visceral, irrational revulsion that transcended reason's cold equations. They were traitors, every last one of them. They had turned on their commanders, murdered their friends. The fact that they had done so because he had commanded it, because his chips had compelled it, mattered not at all to the seething emotion that boiled in his gut. Reason and feeling, Palpatine had long ago concluded, operated on entirely separate systems. The journey from Coruscant to Mustafar required less than an hour of hyperspace travel. He had chosen the location well. Palpatine stood in the shuttle's aft chamber, his private compartment, appointed with the quiet luxury befitting a Supreme Chancellor, facing the floor-to-ceiling viewport. The blue spiral of hyperspace streamed away through the transparisteel. There were arrangements to be made before his return. The Empire would not declare itself. He activated his communicator to reach Masameda, Vice Chair of the Senate. The Chagrian's blue-skinned visage flickered into being above the device, his twin horns sweeping upward, while longer appendages dangled past his jaw. A profile that reminded the Sith Lord, not for the first time, of some manner of aquatic canine. "Your Excellency," Ameda began, unctuous as ever, the subservience of a career bureaucrat who had long ago sold whatever passed for his soul in exchange for proximity to power. "I trust your mission proceeds." "Silence, dog," Palpatine interrupted, savoring the way Ameda's composure cracked, just briefly, into something approaching wounded pride, before settling back into servile blankness. "I require you to organize an emergency session of the Senate. The Republic must be declared an empire. I will address the Assembly personally upon my return." "Of course, Your Excellency, and if your return is delayed, then use the body double, the one we keep for exactly such circumstances." Palpatine's lip curled. "Honestly, must I do your thinking for you?" Ameda's massive horned head bobbed in acknowledgement. "The makeup artists have indicated they will require some time to properly—" "Stop barking. Just get it done, you worthless dog." Palpatine cut the connection before Ameda could respond, deriving a petty satisfaction from the interrupted syllable that had been forming on those blue lips. The galaxy was his to command now. He need not waste politeness on subordinates. The shuttle dropped from hyperspace above Mustafar, that hellish world of volcanic fury and atmospheric toxicity where the Separatist Council awaited Lord Vader's arrival. They were in for a surprise. He could have bombed it from orbit, would have been simpler, cleaner, but after everything, the Temple Massacre, Anakin's insufferable pragmatism, the clones, the senators, the whole exhausting apparatus of galactic conquest, he wanted this, needed it, a personal touch, a celebration. His craft descended through choking clouds of ash, landing upon a platform that jutted from the side of a massive mining facility, like a metal tongue extended over an ocean of fire. Collection arms extended from the facility like skeletal fingers, mining lava for ore. Clone troopers of the Coruscant Guard, Fox and 4 of his elite troopers, their crimson armor immaculate, formed ranks behind their chancellor as he disembarked. The facility's entrance loomed ahead, a doorway into the Techno-Union's mining operation. Palpatine strode toward it, then paused, savoring the moment before violence. Without warning, he spun on his heel and struck Commander Fox across the helmet with the back of his hand. The blow sent the helmet flying, tumbling end over end to clatter against the platform's metal surface, revealing the face beneath, Fox's face, which was, of course, identical to every other clone face, because that was rather the point of cloning. "Stay here," Palpatine snarled. "You son of a—" He did not finish the epithet. He did not need to. The clones lowered their heads in cowed submission, standing at rigid attention as their Supreme Chancellor strode toward the facility's entrance, his black robes swirling in the hot wind that rose from the lava fields below. The mining complex's interior offered merciful relief from Mustafar's oppressive heat. Palpatine navigated the twisting passages, his footsteps echoing against metal grating until he reached the central conference chamber. The Separatist Council awaited him there, a collection of alien profiteers and corporate executives who had grown fat on the war they had helped orchestrate, never suspecting that their string-pulling Sith benefactor had been playing both sides from the beginning. Newt Gunray, Viceroy of the Trade Federation, stood at the head of the table, his expression settling into obsequious welcome. "Ah, Lord Sidious. We were expecting Lord Vader, but Lord Vader is busy," Palpatine said, his tone possessed of the pleasant warmth of a funeral pyre. "I will take care of you instead." He laughed then, a sound that began as a chuckle and escalated rapidly into the full-throated cackle of unhinged mania. Gunray laughed along, nodding eagerly as though he understood the joke. The other separatists exchanged uncertain glances. "Of course, my lord," Gunray continued, his voice wavering only slightly. "First of all, we must discuss the matter of the taxation adjustments in the Outer Rim territories. As you know, the Commerce Guild has expressed concerns regarding the..." Palpatine's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss of plasma fury. Gunray's bulbous eyes widened. "Ah, my lord, what a lovely gift you have brought us. Such craftsmanship." The Viceroy's observation was interrupted, permanently, as Palpatine's blade bisected him from crown to crotch, the two halves of his body separating with a wet sizzle and toppling in opposite directions. What followed was a masterwork of efficient butchery. Sandhill of the banking clan attempted to flee and found his legs removed at the knee, his torso subsequently divided into unequal portions. Wat Tambor of the Techno Union raised his pressure-suited arms in futile defense and watched them clatter to the floor moments before his head joined them. Poggle the Lesser chittered something in Geonosian. Perhaps a curse, perhaps a prayer, perhaps merely an observation about the irony of being murdered by the same man who had hired him to build a Death Star, before being impaled through his thorax and pinned to the wall like an entomological specimen. Shumai, Presidente of the Commerce Guild, died with her hands raised in what might have been surrender. Pascal Argenti of the Corporate Alliance died mid-sentence, his final words forever lost to history. The Kurivar's head hit the floor, horn first, that elaborate spiral clacking against the metal. In less than 3 standard minutes, the Separatist Council, that collection of avaricious executives who had financed a galactic war, who had built droid armies and destroyed worlds, who had dreamed of profit margins written in other beings' blood, lay scattered across the conference chamber in various states of dismemberment. Palpatine stood among the carnage, breathing heavily, his lightsaber still humming its song of death. The dark side sang within him, a chorus of fury and satisfaction and absolute power, and for one perfect moment he felt alive in a way that politics and manipulation never quite achieved. Then he deactivated his blade, straightened his robes, and... the droid army. He still needed to transmit the shutdown codes. Palpatine exhaled through his nose. He turned back toward the console at the far end of the conference chamber, stepping over Gunray's bisected corpse to reach it. The interface was splattered with something. He wiped it clean with his sleeve, pulled up the command frequency, and transmitted the deactivation signal to every battle droid in the galaxy. And just like that, the war was over. From the control center, Palpatine caught sight of a corridor leading to a balcony. He walked toward it, found the force field controls on the wall, and pressed the release. The shimmer vanished. Mustafar's air hit him, hot, acrid. He breathed it in and stepped out onto the platform. The sun hung low and swollen behind veils of volcanic ash, painting the sky in shades of ember and dried blood. He pulled his hood over his head and smiled. As a youth on Naboo, he loved racing speeder bikes, loved the scream of the engine, the blur of the world, the way death waited patiently at the edge of every turn. That thrill had never truly left him. It had simply found new vehicles. Politics, war, the long game played across decades, every moment balanced on the edge of exposure, of ruin, of some Jedi finally seeing through the mask. And now the ride was over. He had crossed the finish line. He had... No, the thought tried to settle into him. That familiar hollow feeling, the one that came when you powered down the engine and climbed off and stood there with nothing ahead of you. He had felt it 1,000 times in his youth. The silence after velocity, the stillness after the wind. No, this was nothing like that. This was only the beginning, he was certain. He stood there a moment longer, watching the rivers of fire crawl across the landscape below. Fox had retrieved his helmet. The troopers stood exactly where Palpatine had left them, arranged in perfect military formation. "Sir," Fox ventured as Palpatine approached, "there have been updates from Coruscant." "Silence, clone. I know how to use a comlink." Palpatine swept past him toward the shuttle's boarding ramp. "Just get us back to Coruscant. Can you manage that? I assure you, it will be much easier than murdering younglings." The clones fell in behind him, silent and obedient. But as they walked, as the Theta-class shuttle's ramp loomed before them, One trooper spoke. His voice was quiet, almost too quiet to hear above the planet's volcanic rumbling, but Palpatine's ears were sharp. "We were just following orders." The Emperor of the Galaxy stopped walking. He turned, slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying the pleasant curiosity of genuine interest. "I don't believe I heard you correctly. What did you say?" The clone who had spoken, CT something, not that it mattered, took half a step back. "Nothing, sir. No." Palpatine raised one hand, his gesture almost grandfatherly in its benevolence. "You said something about orders, about following orders." He stepped closer, his ruined face mere inches from the clone's helmet. "Tell me, if I ordered you to jump into that lava pit," he pointed toward the platform's edge, "would you?" The clone said nothing. "Would you?" Palpatine's voice sharpened. "Answer me." "Sir, I order you." The Dark Lord's finger swept across the assembled troopers. You, and you. I order all three of you to jump into that lava. Right now. Do it." The designated clones stood frozen, their helmets turned toward each other in silent, desperate communion. "No?" Palpatine's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "You won't follow orders? I thought you were just following orders. I thought that's what clones do." His right hand rose, fingers curved like talons, and the dark side answered his call. The three troopers rose from the platform, yanked upward by invisible hands around their throats. They clawed at nothing, legs kicking, gagging sounds escaping their vocators. Palpatine flicked his wrist. The three bodies hurtled sideways, slamming into the platform's surface with a crack of plastoid on metal. Before they could rise, before they could even process what was happening, his left hand came up to join the right, and lightning erupted from both. "Traitors!" he snarled. And then the snarl became something else, a laugh, high and wild and utterly unhinged, echoing across the volcanic hellscape as blue-white fire engulfed them. They convulsed, screaming, their armor glowing, then fusing, plastoid melting into flesh, sealed onto skin. The stench hit Fox and the remaining trooper, burned plastoid, cooked muscle, ozone, and still Palpatine laughed, cackling, shrieking, tears streaming from his yellow eyes as decades of suppressed hatred poured through his fingertips. This felt good. Better than the Jedi, better than Windu. Those had been necessities, obstacles removed. But this was pure. The screaming stopped. The bodies twitched, smoking, barely alive. Palpatine lowered his left hand. The lightning ceased. Then, almost lazily, he flicked his right wrist, and the three ruined forms sailed over the platform's edge. The lava swallowed them without ceremony. 3 splashes, 3 ripples, then nothing. Palpatine turned to regard the surviving clones, Fox and one other, their postures rigid with terror. "Anyone else care to demonstrate their loyalty?" he inquired pleasantly. Neither clone spoke. "No? Then start the ship. I grow weary of this planet." He turned and moved toward the shuttle's boarding ramp. Behind him, Commander Fox and the other survivor exchanged a glance, 2 identical helmets turning toward each other, sharing silent horror, before following him into the shuttle's interior. The 2 pilots at the controls did not turn around. They had heard the screaming. They had no questions. The craft lifted from Mustafar's surface and rose through the choking atmosphere, leaving behind a mining facility full of corpses and a lava field enriched with the atomized remains of 3 soldiers. The journey through hyperspace found Palpatine once again in the shuttle's aft chamber. After his transmission to Ameta, he had silenced his comlink. Politics could intrude upon his return. The Separatists deserved his full attention. When he finally checked the device, several missed messages blinked back at him. Ameta, more, Ameta, again. He contacted Moore. The administrator's pale image materialized above the communicator, one of the few beings in the galaxy who knew exactly who and what he was, and had long ago stopped being impressed by either. Her tone was clinical, detached. "Sheev, we tried contacting you, but..." She let the reproach die unfinished. "Due to your delay, the body double delivered the speech as instructed. The Empire has been officially declared. However..." Palpatine's eyes narrowed. "However?" Master Yoda and Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi infiltrated the Senate Rotunda after the declaration ceremony. They eliminated the double. Moore paused. "He refused to break character, even at the end. Kept insisting he was you. Yoda killed him mid-monologue." "Ah." Palpatine arranged his features into something approaching solemnity. "How unfortunate they then attempted to escape," Moore continued, as though he hadn't spoken. "Kenobi was shot. Yoda activated an explosive charge and threw himself into a group of clone troopers. Both are confirmed dead." Palpatine blinked at the interruption, but let it pass. "Kenobi shot. How utterly pedestrian, though it made sense. The man had always relied on manipulation, on tricking enemies into tactical errors. He was a weak fighter. Palpatine had mocked him for it on the holonet for years under an anonymous handle. The pregnant woman manipulator, he dubbed Kenobi in one particularly viral post. Without someone to manipulate, Kenobi was just a man with a laser sword in a room full of blasters. And Yoda, Palpatine felt a flicker of disappointment. He would have liked to see that, the sanctimonious little troll, taking a squad of those traitorous animals with him. A shame he'd missed it. Anything else? Palpatine asked. The official narrative will report that Jedi terrorists attempted to assassinate the Emperor and were killed by heroic clone defenders. Heroic. Palpatine's lip curled, though he let the words stand. And Anakin? They didn't cause him any trouble? Based on surveillance data, Kenobi and Yoda entered the temple before proceeding to the Senate. What they did inside remains unclear. Skywalker was deep within the archives during their visit. They never found him, it seems. Palpatine allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Is there anything else, Sheev? No, I believe that covers anyone you might be forgetting to inquire about. Moore's voice carried the faintest edge, barely perceptible but present nonetheless. Anyone whose status might be relevant to your interests? Palpatine's brow furrowed in confusion. What? No. He terminated the connection. The shuttle emerged from hyperspace above the capital. Palpatine reached for his communicator to contact Anakin, to inform him of his return, as promised, so they could begin their research into saving the senator. The comm request was denied. Palpatine stared at the device. He tried again. Denied. A third time. Denied. The boy had hung up on him. What in the name of the ancient Sith was happening? Had he become too absorbed in archive research? Had he discovered something that consumed his attention so completely that he couldn't be bothered to answer his new master's communications? The shuttle descended through Coruscant's atmosphere, the city planet glittering below in a sprawl of nighttime lights, unchanged, indifferent to the death of the Republic. Palpatine's communicator chimed. Darwak, his receptionist. Your Excellency, Anakin Skywalker has just arrived at your office. Ah, that explained the rejected calls. He wished to speak in person. What had he discovered in the archives? I will be there shortly, Palpatine replied, and cut the connection. The craft landed in the Chancellor's private hangar. He descended the boarding ramp, not sparing the clones a glance. The clones, what remained of them, stood at the shuttle's base, exhausted and hollow-eyed behind their identical helmets. Palpatine neither noticed nor cared. He crossed the reception lobby, giving Darwak the barest nod, and entered his grand office. He sensed Anakin before he saw him, a presence in his chair. The seat rotated to face where the window had been. The massive pane had shattered beneath Master Windu's blade hours ago. A temporary security field now held back Coruscant's night air, its faint amber shimmer the only light in the room, besides the city's glow beyond.